Okay, I've got 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. At the dais this evening, we have myself, Mayor Marl, council members Dillon, Delorco, Kamara-Sulak, Kraus, and Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh. It is my understanding that council member Seo is participating remotely. Mr. Seo, if you can hear us, if you'd state your name and your geographic location for the record.
Jack Seal in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Very good. Thank you, sir. And from city staff, we have City Manager O'Toole, Clerk Royal, Assistant City Manager, Community Development Director Green, Assistant Treasurer Weberline, DPW Director Searles, and City Engineer Humphreys. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
So moved as submitted.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Dillon. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences. I would note for the public's benefit that there are copies of the agenda on the back table along with hearing devices, and we'd also encourage you to sign in if you are able. At this time, we come to citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments from those in the audience this evening? The record will reflect there are none. Clerk Royal, did we receive any communications in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time?
No, sir.
Easy enough. Then we will proceed to the one presentation of the evening, which is water meter presentation. Seems appropriately worded. Mr. Searles, would you like to begin?
Good evening. Tonight, Core and Main is here. We have Mike Phillips, Mike Martin, and Dan Napier. They're going to present the Core and Main AMI master meter system that comes with work orders and inspection services. And I'm going to turn it over.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Ben, I guess primarily for the audience benefit, could we lower the screen and project it on the overhead as well? Gentlemen, as soon as the screen is lowered and your presentation is illuminated, feel free to begin. Go through your presentation, obviously be thorough, but try to get through it at a brisk pace. And when you've completed your presentation, we will do a round of questions from my council colleagues. We'll start first with my colleague, Mr. Seo, who's participating remotely, and then we'll jump back to get the remaining 6. So with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hello, my name is Dan Napier. I'm with Core and Main, I'm here tonight to help with this presentation for the AMI water system.
I'm Mike Martin with Core and Main. We're here to just kind of go over some of the ROI potentials with the meter installation, change out, some of the service aspects as far as service identification with the installs and capturing that information and how that would be processed. And then here's Mike Phillips.
Good evening. My name is Mike Phillips. I'm with Master Meter. I'm with the manufacturer of the water meters himself. We're just going to go just a brief kind of history over just our two companies real quick, just one slide each. I'll make this brief, and then we're going to go a little bit into the technology that we're presenting to you for the city of Saline, and then just kind of what you're currently using and just the newer technology that's out there today. Of course, focusing on water loss and as well as, a customer service tool. Not only the utility will benefit, but also the ratepayers in Saline will actually benefit from an AMI system as well. So we're going to get into both of those aspects.
Gentlemen, excuse me, when you speak, can you be sure to speak into the microphone at the podium?
Yes, sir.
Otherwise, we have a cordless mic if you prefer to use that.
No, that's okay. I can speak over here.
Very good. Just want to make sure everyone can hear you.
Do you want to do Core and Main or do you want me to do it? So this is just a few facts about Core and Main. They are a national water distributor. They are number one in the underground water market. It's between them and then their biggest rival would be Ferguson Waterworks, and those two are number 1 and 2 in the nation. And this is just a couple stats about their company. And so when you go into business with a distributor like Core & Main, you know that you have a big backing. This isn't a mom and pop shop. They have the staff, the stock, and just the, so Dan is your local municipal rec. He also does plant sales for them. He's also a contractor salesman, and Mike's main focus is water meters. When you sell these types of systems, you want to make sure that you're comfortable with who you're dealing with and that you know that there's support. These systems typically last 15 to 20 years, and 10 years of it is going to be fully warranted. So you want to make sure that you're not just going to buy something from somebody and they're going to walk away because they're too busy. Mike's in the state. He's out of the, Allen Park area. Dan's out of the Howe area, so we have local presence. And I'm out of Dayton, Ohio, and I'm up here every other week because it's my territory, Ohio, Michigan. It did not switch over. Is that supposed to switch over? There we go, sorry. And then a little bit about Master Meter. Master Meter has not been in the game as long as some of our competitors in the field. We've been around since about 1982. So as in retrospect, some of our other competitors in the field, they've been around for over 100 years, so we had to figure out what's going to make us different. And we focused on technology, our customer service, and being able to work with everybody else. My main foot in the game when I get into ultrasonic water measuring technology that we've had in service for over 11 years now. We are the only company that can say that. Everybody else has ultrasonic meters that are out there in the field, and they're about 3 to 4 years in that are in the United States. So once we get into that, we've already seen the ups and downs, and there's certain reasons why we have our meters that we have. And at one of our competitors, they're kind of running into some of the issues that we had in the first couple years of coming out with these solid-state meters. So I'm going to just highlight more so what we do and what kind of separates our company from the field. So you can see we have our commercial meter. Use this little guy. Okay, you can't see it. The commercial meter is the large meter, the stainless steel meter on the left. The right meter, the ones I have in front of you, are the residential meters. We call these the sonatas. The large meters call it the octave. Essentially, we're going on the sound of the principle of sound for the actual measuring technology. If you'd like, I can pass these around so you guys can actually get a visual of it. It's up to you.
Yeah, why don't you,
Is that okay?
why don't you provide one to the city manager and Councilmember Del Orco, and they can pass them down to our other colleagues.
So Councilmember Del Orco, what you'll see different about the one that you have and the one that City Manager Colleen O'Toole has, she has a wire connected to ours, and the one that you do not has no wire to it. So that was something that Master Meter saw as a unique feature that we have in the field. With our systems that have our radios, the radio's built into the actual product itself. So we have a wireless system. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that, why that's important. So your residential radio, your typical radio that's going to be in most of your citizens' households, it's a 5/8 by 3/4. So what you guys are currently have in your system right now is a T10, Neptune T10, and it's a mechanical style type of measuring element. So this is actually a chamber from that same type of meter, and it's called a nutating disc. So we use a positive displacement type of measuring element that goes into this. So basically what it does, it doesn't measure how fast the water is going through the flow tube. It's going to measure the volume. As you can see, this kind of just nutates around once water passes through the actual flow tube right here. What happens over time is that the tight tolerances on the side of this actual measuring chamber, it wears on each other. And so over time, it actually allows for more water to pass through the measuring flow tube and not measure as accurate as a brand new meter. So a PD style meter, positive displacement style meter from AWWA, which is the American Water Works Association, the actual accuracy warranty on those meters is 15 years and 1.5 million gallons. So if you have meters that are older than 15 years in your system, and it's my understanding that you do, then we don't exactly know what the accuracy is on the, and this is just residential. And we're going to get into commercial here in a little bit, so your industrial customers as well. We actually had there was a study that was done at one of the surrounding communities, and they did just a random grab of their meters, and they had for their 5/8 meter, which is the typical meter that's at a resident's house, and they were at between cycle 1, cycle 2, and cycle 3, it was about 27 meters each of each random household, a random group of meters in this particular city. They were at an 83% accuracy. So that means 17% of the water being used by their customers, this is just residential, was going unmeasured. And these are meters that were within 20 years old. So honestly, the meters still were performing what they were supposed to be doing because they only were being allowed 15 years anyways for their accuracy warranty. So what happens is, if you have harder water, whether it's calcium, iron, any type of water that can scour, I'm not saying your water's hard or anything like that, but nobody has perfect water. It just kind of scours the side and allows for more water to pass through. If there's any kind of sand or grit that goes through the line itself, it can actually lodge itself in the side of one of these measuring chambers and allow for water to just pass right through without being measured at all. And this is just on a residential. Now, when you get into commercial, this is the comparison between a commercial. Sorry, I went too far. All right, so this is our 2-inch meter right here. This is a polymer meter. We also have stainless steel. We used to sell ductile iron, but what we found out is with the ductile iron, if you had iron in your water, calcium, it could stick to the ductile epoxy coated inside this flow tube, and it would actually gum up. So what it is, this has a transducer on either side of the flow tube, and at 100 times a second, similar to what the residential is, it's sampling to listen for any water to go through it. So this meter is more accurate than actually a brass mechanical meter that would go into a residence's house. Our 4-inch meter starts measuring water at 1/16 of a gallon. A 5/8 by 3/4 mechanical positive displacement type meter starts measuring water at 1/8 of a gallon. So when you look at the actual residence versus the commercial, most of your revenue is going to come from your commercial customers. There's a rule out there that says 80% of your water revenue comes from 20% of your customers, whether it's your schools, your businesses, hospitals, nursing homes, trailer parks, those type of things. They have that one, what's that, American Soy? They said that that's by far the largest user that you guys have. We got to make sure that those are the most accurate meters possible, because if there used to be meters that would be called compound meters, essentially what that is, it's a compound, it's essentially 2 meters. We'd have a high side and a low side, and your high side would open up when there's a big rush of water going through it. It's in the turbine element, like you see on the screen here, and it can only measure so low. But when it would flap down to the low side, then it can measure down. So that's what's supposed to get your low flow, right? So if it's a 4-inch meter, typically it's a 3/4 or a 1-inch that's on the low side. That's what the brass mechanical meter would be. That doesn't start registering water accurately till about a gallon per minute is going through that. So if somebody flushes a toilet, gets a drink from a drink fountain, any of that water is going to be going unmeasured, and it's been going unmeasured because that's what the technology used to be. Everybody had compound meters. My company as well. We stopped selling compound meters probably 7 years ago because we switched to ultrasonic metering, and I have large customer after large customer that my foot in the door is to look at the commercial businesses because that's where a lot of their water loss is. I have a local reference, the city of Centerville, Michigan, a little bit in the middle of the state. They only have about 500 or so residences. They were at a 48% water loss. They knew some of it was in their lines. They knew also a lot of it was in their meters. Well, they have a county jail that's inside of that same village, that city of Centerville. And what they found out, they changed out their 3 compound meters that were in the county jail. They changed it out to our ultrasonic meters. And when we uninstalled it, I was there for the install, the flapper that was supposed to go to the low side, well, it was stuck in the open position, and nothing was going through the residential low side of that meter. So those 3 meters alone paid for their entire meter reading system within 6 months because that's how much water they were missing out on. And the jail admitted, we knew we weren't paying for the amount of water we were using, but no customer is really going to come to you and say, we should be paying more on our water bill. We're not paying enough. Usually it's the other way around. They're saying that there's no way I use that water. Typically it's a softener in the regeneration or the toilet's leaking or something like that if there's typically a high water bill. So what we found out is that 48% water loss went to 14% water loss within the first year by changing out their water meters. They were going to flat rate everybody. They didn't think water meters was a good investment. And they thought, we'll just do a flat rate, that it's going to be too much of an investment. And they paid for their whole system within 6 months from 3 meters. So that's just one of my examples that I have, and I have many more, of just changing out larger meters. And yes, you're going to see some increase on your residents, but really it's not going to be an increase on the residents. It's more so the businesses and the commercial customers that have been using a lot of water are going to be billed accurately now. So those 2 meters that we had, this one in particular with no wires, that is very unique for us. So we put the radio and the measuring element and the register you saw here. It's all under, we call it under the glass technology. You can see on the screen right there, that's what typical meter companies, that's a pit set. But if you're in the basement set, typically you would put the actual wire to the either outside of the house or in the top of the basement or something like that. Most of the companies today will like you to actually drill a hole through the homeowner, put the radio on the outside of the house because that's the best way they can propagate. We don't require that. I actually gained a customer because I was down in the Cincinnati market, and the water meter provider down there told the utility they have to put the radios on the outside of the house to get good reception. And they said they're not going to do it. We don't want to drill holes in all of our customers' houses. We want to use exactly, we just want to have a meter that works, and the company that they were dealing with said, you just can't do it that way. So they were just fed up with them. And honestly, if you even have some that are outside the house right now, and you're going to try to put replace that, you want to make sure those wires are correct. When you have a wired product, you have 3 points of failure. You have the register of the meter, the radio of the meter, and the wire of the meter. When you go to troubleshoot that, you have to figure out what's going on with that meter. And if you have all 3 of those, regardless, you're going to have to go inside the house and make sure it's not the register of that water meter. With ours, it's the meter itself. That's the troubleshoot right there. That's how easy it is for any kind of troubleshooting with the tech guys out in the field. And then if we do need a wired option, we do have that as well. Like I said, we kind of prided ourselves for the under the glass technology, but we also can work with everybody. So our foot in the door is our large meters, and actually City of Saline, you guys have purchased some of our large meters in the last few years, replaced it in places that you could not put a compound meter in just because of the lay lengths that were actually out there. I believe the community building, there's one down there that was in the boiler room, because it was a 3x12 lay length, and they wanted a low flow meter, and a turbine's the only low flow meter, and a turbine doesn't start measuring water till 5 gallons per minute, which ours starts measuring water at 1/16 of a gallon. So it is going to be measured as accurate. You're not raising their water bill. You're just measuring everything accurately that they haven't been paying for, in the past. So here's just a comparison about ultrasonic versus mechanical. It's coming to a point that there's a lot of companies out there that are trying to get into this space. Master meter, we have focused on our ultrasonic. We do have mechanical meters as well, but when you have the latest and greatest, you want to be able to present that to the community to know that it's going to work. And people say, well, it's a plastic meter. What if it freezes? Well, anything's going to freeze if it gets below freeze point. Doesn't matter if it's brass, stainless steel, plastic, it's going to freeze. This actually will give you over the network a freeze warning and burst warning that says, I'm at 34 degrees. Somebody needs to check me because either I was installed in a place that didn't winterize me, or the power's out, or whatever it might be, but that actual meter will tell you when it's going to freeze. So that's one of its actual alerts that comes with that register. This is a little bit more about the technology I kind of already went through. And here's a little bit of real-world ROI, and I've heard some people say, well, if we take out any old meter and put a new meter in, of course we're going to increase in revenue. We actually did a white page study with Gwinnett County, Georgia. It's the second largest county in the state of Georgia, in which we put a brand new compound meter and a brand new ultrasonic meter in line. We put the ultrasonic meter first and then the compound meter afterwards. It was at townhomes and apartments within 365 days, and we have this as on our website if you would like to look into it. It's very in-depth, it's very interesting. The additional revenue was $31,000 were registered on the ultrasonic meter that the compound meter was not picking up. And what happens during a compound, they have a crossover point between the high and the low side. The AWWA specification says you're allowed to be 90% accurate in that crossover point. So a brand-new meter can be 10% revenue not coming back into that. So a lot of the people that are seeing that out there, mechanical meters, they're expensive to fix. A lot of people aren't fixing them these days. It's hard to find parts for those. There's not a lot of companies that actually do it anymore. So yes, it's a solid state meter. There are no moving parts. It's straight through. We don't require a strainer. And there's no pressure loss as well. And then here's another one. This was a 4-inch between a compound and our octameter that we have out there. And here's just a few different examples of just the measuring between a mechanical meter and an ultrasonic meter. And there's a few of the larger cities that are using this currently. Columbus, Ohio is my largest customer that I have, and anything over 2 inches is the only meter that they put in. They've actually have had some of their customers get a back charge just because of this, going in and saying that we weren't measuring exactly what we should have been measuring. So they put the ultrasonic meter in there and they said, well, no, this is what you guys should have been paying because we've been losing money on you for 30 years, So the ultrasonic is the technology that's been out there for, 12 years in the United States, and we've kind of pioneered it, our company has. Now, a little bit into, we're going to look into AMI, and it's all about analytics. When you have you guys are a quarterly billed system right now. So once a quarter, you get your read, which is your daily read and any reports that are coming back, whether it's a leak, high usage report, low usage report, sometimes tamper, which would be like a cut wire. So depending on what version of radio you have, you might get a battery alert. But that's once a time in a quarter that you're going to get that in. When you have an AMI system, that's every single day you're going to get daily inflow of just data coming in, rich analytics that can be, instead of being reactive to all these different things that could happen in your system, you're more so proactive for it. So what we would do, basically, we take the infrastructure that you currently have. We don't need to put anything new in here, whether it's a water tower, storm siren. We just put our infrastructure, excuse me, with the mask on, it's hard. Infrastructure on the water tower, or we actually have it on, what was the avenue? The Henry Street would be the main point because that's most centrally located. And we have very few infrastructure needs for the system itself. And the reason for that, we use a licensed frequency. Most drive-bys in the past were unlicensed 900 megahertz frequency, which is great for drive-by. But if you know anything about 900 megahertz, there's a lot of things on that span. Excuse me. Your garage door opener, baby monitors, they're all on 900 megahertz. So what we do for our system is the license frequency. So we actually purchase licenses for our communities that we work with from the FCC. Nobody else can impede on it. It's between the 450 and 470 megahertz span. So one piece of infrastructure, our base stations can go 2.5 mile radius around that particular area. So for what you guys have for the Saline, we did a propagation study. It was one base station and 2 repeaters. We might not even need 2 repeaters. We might need 1. So basically what it is, you put the base station centrally and a repeater on the outskirt, and then that would grab about 1 mile around circumference around that water tower that you guys have by the water shop, and then the other one's 2.5 miles. And every single day, 12 hours of hourly data are coming in with reads. Within a 5-minute latency, though, there could be a leak that can come in. So whether it's, somebody who left their, faucet on the outside hose bib, or they have a toilet running, within a 5-minute latency, that actually gets reported back to the system. not only does the utility see it, but the customer sees it as well. And 24 hours of continuous use brings a leak. So if a customer has a toilet running for 24 hours, that's when a leak pops up. That's when it'll alert the utility. It's also going to alert the ratepayer. And I actually had a customer, City of Wilmington in Ohio, that the assistant to the mayor, when I was giving this presentation, she was sitting next to me and she kind of like raised her hand. She's like, so, you know, is this something that we're looking at getting? I was like, yes, ma'am, it is. And she said, well, it's a good thing because I think it'd be great for our community. I came home after a 2-week vacation to 2 feet of water in my basement. And if we would have had that system, I could have, you know, seen that I had a leak and had somebody go to my house and actually turn my water off. You can actually, and I'll get into it in a little bit, but the customer themselves can actually set a vacation time that once they're away on vacation, if any water's being used at all in their house, whether, you know, you have somebody coming over to let the dog out, to feed the animals, or, you know, some communities, I've heard people actually stealing water from their neighbor and filling up their pool while the person's away on vacation. As soon as any water's being used, you're not there, it's gonna spring an alert, and it will alert the customer to tell them that there's water being used and you're not supposed to be home right now. Full two-way communication. People in the billing office loves this. If I ever need to do a move-in, move-out, and I need to get a final read, I don't have to send somebody out in the field. I get it from a push of the button. It takes about 3 minutes to come back to me, and I give the exact read what's on that meter right now. To be able to do that, a lot of these other companies that might be out there, you have to wait for your time slot till that comes back. So a lot of people like to do that for their renters. Hey, they need to pay their bill, they're moving out, we need to give them their final water bill. And you can do that easily with this full way to communication that we have with our systems out there. And this is just a picture of the actual equipment itself. The cabinet, the bigger cabinet, that's the base station. Essentially what it is, we put a coax cable, we run it to the top and put an omnidirectional antenna on top of the actual AMI infrastructure itself. And then that just reports back to City Hall or billing office, wherever you guys want to have it report back to. Only so many people can actually have access to the full gamut of all that and the analytics and everything like that. And then the ratepayer themselves can view their bill on a daily basis, especially with quarterly billing. They can see it every single day what they're using. And it can also alert them to how much they're going to be using by the end of the quarter. They can set a threshold. Hey, you use so many gallons per month or per quarter. I want you to alert me when I get to 500 gallons because then I know I need to start budgeting a little bit better because I'm using too much water and it might be going higher than what I normally spend on my water bill. So everything comes back into our MDM. And I know this is a big point of emphasis with utilities. MDM is an acronym for Meter Data Manager. So it's completely secure. We use the same security that Microsoft Cloud Azure uses. We are SOC 1, SOC 2 compliant. Essentially what that is, it takes a lot for us to get those security measures for our system. Nobody can just log in and something that they're not supposed to be seeing. We have to actually have every utility that we work with sign a EULA agreement just so our own techs can actually view what you guys have in the system itself. This is a snapshot of a customer's just usage. On a daily, I check all my systems just to make sure that they're operating how they should. I was actually on the phone with the city of Greenville, Michigan. One of their billing clerks had a question. Her and I went over at about 4 o'clock today so she can describe to her customer what they're seeing, because this is information that you can send out either an email or you can print it off and hand it to somebody. If they have a question, they come in and pay their water bill. Why is my bill so high? Well, let's look at the last 30 days. It looks like on the 4th, that weekend on the Saturday, you guys had a huge rush of water. What were you guys doing that day? It looks like around 2 o'clock. Oh yeah, we were filling up our pool that day. Well, then that's why you had a higher water bill. So to be able to have that information at your fingertips, not having to send somebody out there, is just a rich tool to have. I think this is very important. This is district metering zones. So the polygons that are on this screen right now, say you guys want to communicate with the residents that we have to do a boiler advisory, but we only want to do it for a certain section of town that we have to shut down the actual water line because we have a water line break. Well, I can log in, go on the GIS screen and see all the meters that are going on in Saline. I can draw a polygon on all the meters that I need to send out a message to and say, hey, there's a boiler advisory in your area, and it's only going to go to those particular customers. And if they have any questions about it, they can actually message the utility back. So the communication between the ratepayers and the utility is all in your MDM, and there's also a timestamp and a read for each time that they want to communicate. So if you send somebody a leak alert, because maybe they didn't want to log into the customer portal, and then they said, you never sent me anything that said I had a leak, like I sent it to you on the 10th at 2 o'clock, and I sent you a letter said, you might want to get somebody to, a plumber in your house to make sure that you guys don't have any running water somewhere because we show a leak on our system. All that's time-stamped. And then you can put any kind of alerts, you can snooze an alert. If it's an old school building that is always going to have a leak, well then, you know what? I know there's a leak, they know there's a leak, we're just going to snooze it for the next 30 days. We'll see if they fix it after that. And then this is just more of the customer portal, just basically giving the ratepayer just more of a, more responsibility about their water bill. I've heard very interesting stories about there's no way I've used this type of water. These meters need water for it to start measuring. They don't just run for no reason. It's an interesting way that typically what you hear, and you're not supposed to go into people's houses and everything like that. I'm not a licensed plumber, but the utility requested, hey, can you please help me out, see what's going on over here? You can walk in and I can hear a toilet leaking right away. I'm like, well, it's a toilet. Well, it might be in the one in the basement that nobody ever uses. Well, that still can have a leak. I saw one today when I was with the lady at the city of Greenville, and 30 gallons per hour was a leak in this person's house. And if you do the math, it's about a half gallon a minute. And basically what that was, it was just the flapper was probably stuck, and it was just filling up and draining, filling up and draining. But it did that throughout the whole month. And she's like, I told them once about it, and now they're complaining about their bill. Well, this can also help with not even raising rates, because everybody is, getting to their information a much easier way, in a much timely way, whether than it's once a quarter. And it can even, in the future, if you guys would ever want to go monthly billing instead of quarterly billing. I've had some utilities that have gone from cubic feet to gallons, from quarterly to monthly because of an AMI system. Because before, it was impossible for them to do it. They just didn't have the staff to do it. With an AMI system, something would take 2 to 3 weeks of reading meters could be done within a couple hours. So that's the most important thing, I think, is the rich analytics that come through these AMI systems, and just the flexibility. And we kind of listen to our customers that we have out there. If there's a feature that you would like to see, hey, we want to make sure we can do this and that, well, then that's something that we focus on. We're actually, that's another important thing I like to bring up. Master Meter has never once sold a system. I've been with the company 7 years, and I've talked to some of our senior salespeople and came back to that same customer and said, we need you guys to upgrade your software or we can't support you. We make everything backwards compatible, which out of the other larger meter companies, nobody else can say that. Where if they come out with a new version of their radio, then they say, well, actually, now you guys got to change to this software and we got to resell you, essentially. And that's actually gained me business, because Mike and I actually sold the city of Mackinac City a meter system that I sold back in, well, I didn't sell it, but they sold it back in 2002. We sold it to Mackinac City 2 years ago, and it's with a brand new software. But it still works with the brand new software because we made it that way. I have some utilities that are 200, customers, and that's all they have. It's not fair for me to go in there to try to resell them on a system that was sold to them, and it's like a $20,000 upgrade, and they say, well, there's no way I can afford that. We're not going to kick them off because they're still paying their annual fees with us. So I don't think that's right. That's not a right way to sell. That's just my opinion. The real-time leak notifications with the customer portal, I think, is very important as well. And that's basically it about the presentation. So if you guys have any questions, we're here to answer them, and I'm going to have some help from my core main guys as well.
Thank you, gentlemen. Raise the screen. Either City Manager O'Toole or DPW Director Searles, before we open it up for questions, are there any comments that you would like to make at this time? I'll defer first to the City Manager.
No additional questions.
Okay, no comments from Colleen. Mr. Searles, would you care to make any additional comments?
One thing that I would like to add, as the Core Main was talking about the functionality of reading water, one of the other benefits of the software is it is a record and work order system that has already integrated with BSNA, which we use for billing, and Esri, which we're starting to incorporate with our data collection for DPW. That's all I have to add.
Very good. Mr. Searles, why don't you hang tight, because there may be some questions articulated from the dais or remotely that are best addressed by you. Again, I'll begin with our colleague who is participating remotely. Mr. Seal, Councilmember Seal, are you still with us? You might be muted. Jack, are you there?
No, I'm not muted, Your Honor.
Okay,
Just got a-
there you are.
got a
Do you have any
flaky
questions for
connection
DPW Director Searles or our guests, Mr. Seal?
I do. Several pages in their presentation where they actually have pictures of the meters, the old mechanical meter and then their residential ultrasonic. They talk about two terms, continuous duty and turn down ratio. Can somebody tell me what those are?
Yes, sir. Continuous duty essentially would be your intermediate flow in a household, and essentially what that is when you're doing the dishes or you're doing laundry or you're watering the lawn, continuous duty is essentially just running water for a continuous amount of time. And then, sir, with the turn down ratio is important because that's the accuracy over amount of time. So ours is a higher turn down ratio, I believe it's 1,000 to 1, in comparison to a mechanical style meter, which it can fluctuate. It's not as accurate over time, and it doesn't hold its accuracy over time. That's with any mechanical meter, they slow down over time, they don't speed up. So I know what I have in my front lawn right now is an older style meter, and that's one thing I won't ever complain about is my meter, because I know it's not as accurate as it should be. So, and I'm a meter salesperson, and I'm saying that. So that's what basically a turn down ratio is, just your accuracy over time through that continuous flow.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Well, that's,
All you have, Mr. Seal, thank you. Let me start to my left and I'll work my way right. Mr. Delorco, questions for either our DPW Director or our guests?
Yeah. So I would like to speak to Core and Main a little bit about the a meter with a cord versus the meter with
Yeah, the,
wireless system.
yep, the under the glass.
Do both of the meter systems require the use of a battery?
Yeah, so this meter is a battery meter. It's an ultrasonic meter, so yeah, there's no way around the battery.
Okay. So one of the things I really want to seek to understand is the limitations of the technology. It's my understanding that the battery and the meter itself are all a self-contained unit, and there's a limited lifespan on that battery. And when that battery goes, I'm guessing on the order of 12 to 14 years, you can't just come out and change the battery. You have to come out and change the entire meter.
Correct.
And that's going to lead to all the meters failing at the same time. So from a municipality's perspective, we would have to plan for that as early as now, because we're going to, if we go and change out all the meters at once, then they're all going to fail at once, and that's going to be a significant investment a second time around.
There's a couple things to it. I mean, they're not all gonna fail at once just because they're installed at once. And you will get battery alerts with these, and
it's a 3 to 6 months, essentially a heads up that it's gonna go. And when Mike is correct, because these are based on transmissions. So if I have a meter that I'm gonna talk to it more than the meter next to me, that meter's gonna last longer. We expect 16 to 17 years. We were getting 12 to 14 years on our older system. If lithium chloride batteries is the technology that we use inside of the actual units themselves, we all get our batteries from the same manufacturer over in Tataram, Israel. And so it's just better technology today, but you're right. It is one of those things that you don't just put a system in and then for 20 years you don't touch it. That's not any meter system that's out there. So with the battery operated thing, I would say by year 15, just make sure that that's in a capital improvement plan. We should be looking at that meter anyways to get your hand on any kind of, if there's any cross connection or anything that might be going on inside the household while you're doing an audit of the meter itself. But it will give you that heads up, like Mike said, a 3 to 6 months heads up that it's gonna go on you.
Wait.
It won't just die.
Which is a big part of this with the installs is doing the audit, getting the city the correct information on what's out there. We all know lead and copper is a big push right now, and that helps assist you guys with that.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate the benefits that it affords in terms of telemetry and as you talked about, richness of the analytics. I just want to make sure that we're fully understanding all the sort of costs one might not think about as you contemplate
Right.
overhauling an entire system. Do you have any experience with municipalities that pilot the program with, say, their commercial customers? As you stated previously, that's your, big loss of revenue with your businesses. Is that a common practice?
Yeah, so I actually have a utility not too far from here in northwest Ohio, the village of, sorry, I gotta talk from this. The village of Swanton, that's what they started out with. They focused on their large meters, and they hit those first, and then they did their residential meters afterwards. And so that's when they saw that their revenue went up, essentially, because of their age of their large meters that they had in their system. Problem was, they did have to pay 2 actual mobilization fees to the actual install company to come in here to do the large meters first and then to do the small meters next. City of Defiance, Ohio is another one of my AMI customers, and I was in a council meeting, and one of the council members said to me, he's like, well, we just finished changing out our last round of meters. Why are we buying a new system right now? Well, it took them 14 years to install their radio read system for the City of Defiance. And so their meters that they were installing at the beginning were starting to fail. And so that's why they wanted to we're gonna do a clean slate. We're gonna put it in our capital improvement plan. By year 10, we should be really looking in 5 more years. That's when we're gonna actually have to replace it again. So that's the way that they kind of approached it. But I see some people, they do it 2 ways. And actually, City of Greenville's looking, they only have right now, out of the 5,000 meters that they have in their system, they have about 1,200 that are installed. They are gonna do large meters next. They're gonna install a majority of their large meters. Actually, tomorrow night is a council meeting for them, and they're gonna get that approval because they know they're missing out a lot of their large meter system, and then they wanna do their residential afterwards.
Yeah.
So everybody's different the way they wanna do it and how they kinda cut it kind of way, so.
Yeah, with it being such a dramatic shift from our current process,
Yes, sir.
it seems like it would be a good idea to test it out first on the large. It certainly makes sense for the large commercial application.
Yes, sir.
I'm not necessarily convinced about the residential, based on the impact it would have to the ratepayer, but I sent along some questions for you to evaluate earlier today, and I apologize, it was so late in the day. But there's, potentially a lot of costs that could fall on the ratepayer as far as the state that the valves are in when the contractors arrive and what would need to be replaced, what we could take advantage of what's already there, what kind of costs there would be associated with that and so forth.
I also want to point out that we did do the research. We're spending a little over $30,000 a year walking to read the meters that we have in system.
Okay,
That was our labor rate. That was something you guys had asked for.
that's important. Okay, I'll defer the rest of my questions for another time. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Councilmember Delarco. Mayor Pro Tem Gearbox, questions for either our DPW Director or our guests?
And I guess, first question is for Mr. Searles. When you look at our system and our meters, what's the average age of our meters? And do you believe we're experiencing the same failure that he's already identified tonight?
Yeah, our meter system, if you take out the recent new development meters, our system's average is pretty old, older than 20 years. And there's some very serious issues with accuracy with positive displacement meters at that age.
One of the aspects, when we talk about the security and concerns like that, you mentioned how you use Microsoft Azure or whatever it is. What do you have in concerns of potential hacking, or have you had any issues? This is for our vendor.
No, no, not yet, sir. I haven't experienced that, neither has our company. That's why we had to go through those SOC 1 and SOC 2 compliance for the security of the actual system itself. Of course, what the information is that's inside of that is data that's coming from the meters themselves. So what you can view, if somebody were to be, I guess, malicious and were to get into the system, they would be able to basically be able to view water usage, leaks, any kind of alerts, whether it's a counterclockwise or, a stagnant meter, those type of things, battery alerts. That's all that our Harmony system really has into it. We do export to the billing software, but that's done manually. That doesn't happen automatically. So you guys use BSNA. Our system is separate from that. We do work hand in hand. BSNA is, I would say, 90% plus in the state of Michigan. That's a lot of communities use that software. But no, we haven't experienced it yet. And I'm not saying we won't, but it really, all they can do is view people's usage online for that type of thing. You can't change anything. You can't reset anything back to zero. That is done with field tools that the trained technicians from the city of Saline would have to be able to go out there and actually, what the meter, say if I took a meter out and I wanted to put in a new residence or a new, business, I can put that meter, set it back to zero, and start fresh with that. Or if a rental property wanted to do the same type of thing. But really, it's all just you're viewing all the information that would be hooking up with your guys' GIS and any kind of communication that the utility has with the ratepayers themselves.
Do these meters provide any other kind of analysis or sensors to determine the type of water going through it? Like, is there hardness or anything like that? Or does it also measure pressure?
No, sir, not currently. We are actually, by the end of, we're not focusing on our residential, our large meters. That means 2-inch through 12-inch meters. We will be able to do pressure, we think by the end of quarter 2 of 2022, which essentially, people that have undulated geographical areas like hills and all those type of things, they would very much benefit out of that, seeing the high and low pressure zones. But for residential, they can't measure it. They can measure the temperature of the water that's going through it, and then just the flow, whether it's going frontwards or backwards.
And when you mention there's annual fees and those type of things, what are your average inflationary or cost increases every year?
Yes, sir. So our annual fees per endpoint is $1.54. Is that correct? $1.54 per endpoint, and that's what you would be paying. So you multiply that over 3,500 meters is roughly around where you guys are at. As far as the customer portal goes, that's something I should have brought up in my presentation. We don't charge an annual fee. I think we are the only company that doesn't charge an annual fee for that. There are other third-party providers that some of our competition has to use that they'll charge you $2.50 an endpoint. That's after $25,000 of a setup fee. And then that goes up on an annual basis. So with our company, the customer portal, it's going to be at, first of all, they included it into your guys' package that we included with the cost of it itself. And so there is no fee for it. So, and you can turn it on whenever you want to. So I've had some utilities that they would start with our system, let everybody get comfortable with it. They don't release everything. And then within a first year, then they said, okay, we're going to give all of our businesses the customer portal to tell them to sign up for it. And then we're going to give them a training session. And I've done Facebook Live trainings for those type of things in which this is how you sign up. You put your account number in, you put your name and address, and you create a password. And then you can view your bill online. So when we do those type of things, it's an ongoing relationship between myself as a manufacturer, Corman as a distributor, and then the city of Saline. It's basically what you guys want to put into it, that's what you're going to get out of it.
And one last question, and so we can move on to the others. You mentioned about the ability to communicate back and forth between the customer and so forth. Does that have multiple ways of communicating besides email, text, phone, that you could do a type of a notification from different ways? Concerning some people don't have email necessarily, or?
Are you talking about like maybe messaging on the app itself, or what?
If say you had an emergency and we wanted to notify all these individuals that their water's shutting, that, as you showed where you're using the diagram where you can identify all the meters and you want to send out
Yes, sir.
a blanket message. Can you do that in multiple different types
You
of
can do it through
media?
text.
Text and
Yes.
email? Can
And
it be done
email.
on a voicemail type of situation?
Voicemail, you know what? I haven't been asked that before, and I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. So I would like to see if we can do that. But I know through text and email, And you can do that for sure. But I'm not too sure about voicemail. I'll have to ask. I apologize for not.
That's
having
fine. No,
that
it's just understanding, because of the way that we have some seniors that may not necessarily be in that type of situation and trying
Yes,
to
sir.
reach them all. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gearbox. Councilmember Dillon, any questions for our guests or DPW Director Searles?
Thank you. Several of my questions have been asked and answered, so I will move on. One is, what is your current failure rate of your meters?
Are you talking about like the reception of the meters throughout the system or just the meter that itself for it failing?
Both, please.
Okay, so the reception, it's something that I do like to boast about. We have a very robust system. It being licensed at 450 to 470 megahertz frequency, I can say, and I don't ever bring up other companies, but there's one other company that I could say we have just as good of a system as they do. I can bring up on my laptop 9 or 10 communities that we're reading at 98, 99, 97, 99, 97, 99.4%. I'm missing maybe 3 meters on a daily basis. And that changes because of the foliage that's going on the trees, or somebody might have parked on top of a meter lid. So the reception rate is incredible. And usually when I do a bid situation, it's 98.5% is what they want to see. And that way you can get all your reads at one time a month is when you actually bail it out there. Us using that license frequency, and which is great about it because we're up in Michigan and most of the meters are actually inside of the resident's home. Well, it's not in a meter pit with a meter lid full of water. So if I'm down in like southern Ohio, your reception isn't as good down there just because it's harder to get that RF signal out of the actual meter pit itself, unless we change it out to a plastic lid or we put an actual wired unit at the top of the lid itself. The houses and crawl spaces, basements, it's in a dry area. It almost acts like a conductor, and we get fantastic reception. City of Greenville, I believe they're about 5.7 square miles geographically, and we thought we thought we were going to have to use more than what we were using. We have one base station, one repeater. I checked before I actually drove up here. We were at 99.3 read reception, so we're missing, I think, like 13 meters. And those they waffle back and forth. But if it's 13 meters, then we do give our guys field tools that if they need to go get that meter, if it's not reporting, it's time for it to read, well, then they just go drive by and they pick it up and comes back, So, and that's also a fail-safe. If something were to come in and knock down the infrastructure, those meters who can't communicate with the tower, they realize they can't communicate with the tower, and they automatically switch to drive-by mode. They're still looking for the tower. So once that tower is back online, and we are obligated within, I believe, 3 business days to come out here if it's extreme enough to replace that particular piece of infrastructure to get you guys back online. But those meters are still working, they're still recording, and once that infrastructure's back online, well, then they shoot back into AMI mode again, and they just fill back all the reads, and hey, this is what you guys missed out on. And then as far as failure rate goes, as far as these meters go, I haven't had any that have gone, right? Now, I do have a community not too far from here. They have a water quality issue, and I definitely will not divulge their information, that they've had some that have gummed up just because of the manganese that they have in their system. So if that's the issue, it doesn't matter if it's mechanical or ultrasonic, the meter's going to gum up regardless. But I haven't seen any blank meters yet. That's the fail-safe that these are supposed to tell you when they're supposed to go. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. You might have 1 or 2 that you might have to replace. Somebody might drop one or whatever it might be. But I don't see a high failure rate on these. And that's something that I am pretty proud of with our company, that we do take our time when we make something.
Thank you for that. And then I wanted to ask, I'm just making sure, because some of these questions, like I said, have been asked. So you're providing great information, and it's coming back to the city. Does that put the onus now onto the city to contact homeowners? Hey, it looks like you have high use. Or is it the homeowner that will accept that responsibility? Because I don't think we've got the staffing to babysit.
Sure.
Even through a computer-generated report, and to make contact with homeowners, whereas, there's 3 feet of water in your basement, why didn't you contact me? I don't know that the city wants to accept that piece of responsibility. So I just want to make sure that what's coming to the city is also going to the homeowner or the business at that same time, and it is on them to respond to any issue.
And that is exactly what you just said. It's really the responsibility of the ratepayer to be a steward of their own water usage. Now, everybody take that responsibility and run with it. I don't know. We typically see, depending on how many people actually pay their bill online and still pay in person, that's when you kind of correlate that between how many people actually use the customer portal and how many people will still just kind of just get their bill. I hear from so many utilities that we put, different things on the actual bill or a postcard and nobody ever reads it until something happens and they're like, hey, you guys never told us this was going on. Well, we put it on your bill. It's just depending on the homeowner itself. Now, as far as businesses go, I know that they will use it. That's a big thing because they are very much watching their bills. And a lot of these businesses that have their own system inside of their actual facility, whether they're recycling the water, they have their own, just standpipes inside of their actual facilities, they want to know what they're using on a daily basis because they have their own meters that are inside of their facilities, whether it's bottling, water bottles or whatever it might be. I believe that they will love this. Trailer parks was the very first thing that we saw that they wanted their information on a daily basis because they know that they might have leaks out in their own system. Usually people just master meter, essentially just put one meter at the beginning of a trailer park and then everything else is just managed by the trailer park. Well, if you put a more accurate meter out there, they're going to say, well, how am I using that much water? Well, we're going to show you every single day, every single hour what you're using. As far as homeowners going, yes, you're still going to get phone calls. There's still going to be people calling in and saying, there's no way I use this type of water. I think regardless of what you have, whether you give them that information or not, you're still going to get that. I do have a utility that's in West Virginia that they installed all these, their whole system has them. And they said at the beginning they got phone calls, but then after that, people actually started working on their houses and making sure that their house was in proper order, making sure their solenoid valve was working correctly, their softeners were working correctly, because if you don't check on it, if you have a system that already doesn't catch it, well, then the utility's paying for that because you're having to distribute the water throughout the whole system. And if it's not measured accurately, well, you've been basically just losing money doing that type of thing. So now that everything's going to kind of come to a head when you put in a new system, they're going to see, yes, at the beginning, it's not going to be the easiest part, but over time, maybe people are going to say, this is great. I love being able to view my bill online. Power companies have been doing it for years. They've been able to view, cell phone companies did it with the data stuff. So, I mean, it's one of those things that if it's accepted, now it's in the water area. So I guess it's just depending on the utilities ratepayers is my long-winded answer. Sorry.
Thank you very much for that. My last question will be for Mr. Searles, which is, do you think it would be advantageous for the city to move forward, as Mr. DeLorco had indicated, either doing a business aspect of it or just doing sections of the city, breaking the city up? Can we run two different systems at the same time?
Absolutely. Because right now we have a hodgepodge of three systems anyway. We still walk and get reads and hit touchpads, and we have some on R900 and some on R450 and some master meters that are cabled and some that are not. So we have a lot out there. I think the biggest benefit for Saline as a community is we would actually start gathering data the day we install it. I don't have a work order system. This provides it. And it works with our billing system, BSNA. Our biggest advantage, like you were talking about, high usage, right? Well, we had 137 of them from the last time we read. That's 137 trips to a house that James Hatfield has to make. Cost us $6,000 a year just in rechecks. So we're spending some money making sure that we're doing our job for our residents. They need to have water and they need it metered accurately. So we do have a cost associated with not moving forward as well. But we could do it at any rate that we think is best for the residents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Dillon. Councilmember Kamara Sulak, any questions for DPW Director Searles or our guests?
Yes, actually, if you don't mind staying up there for another minute, I want to piggyback on Ms. Dillon's last question. Could we have this installed in a two-phase, like do the commercial properties first and then do the residential? Is that something that you've thought about? And if Master Meter has done that before?
We could do it in any number of phases that we like. Obviously, we're going to get a mobilization charge for the phases, and we'll lose a little economies of scale on the purchase. You know, if you're buying every meter at once, it's a little less than buying some meters at a time, but absolutely we could.
How much is the estimate of the mobilization cost? And what does that entail?
So, I'll answer that for Larry. So the mobilization cost is the install team. It's entailing their stay here in the city, getting businesses set up, if we're talking large meters, with appointments and installs coordinated and everything, and just getting them dispersed. So in this package, right now, we have no install or mobilization cost, because the original presentation was just for it all to be done at once. So I would have to kind of come back to you for a mobilization fee like that. At the moment, there was none involved.
Okay. Well, then, approximately how many people are doing the installation at once? Because I would imagine it would take quite some time to, what I think you said, that there's 3,500 endpoints?
3,500, yeah.
Okay.
So it really depends. I mean, we were thinking of trying to get this project done within 4 to 5 months if you were to move forward, and we were so fortunate for something like that to happen. And the crew would come out, and it'd vary, you know, during that 4 to 5 months, but probably 12 guys going at a time until completion, and then there's a call center and everything else. If we're doing the businesses, it'd probably be a crew of 6 out here or something along those lines, and, you know, we would coordinate with you guys and get a plan for how long you would like to see it done. You know, if you want it done within 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, we can kind of adjust accordingly to make it happen on our end. It's more what the utility would like to see.
Okay. I'd be interested in you know, a two-phased approach to this. It sounds like it's a big endeavor anyways. So if it takes 3 to 4 months, you know, of what the mobilization costs would be, you know, put that in the mix for us to think about. And then so any extra costs that are incurred to the ratepayers, what would you estimate as let's say the worst case scenario from past experiences? I'm concerned about what kind of expenses that our ratepayers may encounter, so that we're prepared for it, they're prepared for it, and it's not a surprise.
It's really valve replacement. It's the big cost. Wouldn't you agree, Mike?
Yeah, and it depends on the customer's household. Essentially, what these install teams do, we have a project meeting kickoff, and what they'll do, they'll say, well, what do you guys want us to do? Because it's all kind of, I guess, just a la carte out. So do you guys want us to replace valve replacement, or do you want us to make it an RTU, which is return to the utility? Would you like to come and handle it yourself? Because the installers can kind of do whatever you'd like them to do, but they really just rely on what the utility would like them to incur. So if you come across a valve, you don't think that's going to shut off while you're taking out a meter, replacing the meter, just take a picture, take the information, and tell us about it, and we'll get with the homeowner and see what they want to do, if they want to get their own plumber in there, however Larry and his team would like to handle that. Or, no, we're just going to have you guys do everything, and this is what, how we want to do it for anything that we come across. The great thing about these install teams is they give the utility a customer portal just for the install. They say what we did, what we came across, anything we ran into that particular day, and each day they update it. They will also have pictures of everybody who's gonna be out on their crew, and to say, hey, when we set up the appointment, Steve's gonna come to your house, and this is what Steve looks like, and he'll be in your house, probably take about 10 minutes, depending on what you run into, and then this is what he's gonna be, and if he comes into a funky setup or something, Steve is probably just gonna take a picture, notify his project manager and say, you know, we didn't want to shut off the meter was not even in line, just depending, there's always different scenarios when you get inside of somebody's setup in their basement,
Right.
but they are all they're licensed, they know exactly what, they've been doing it all throughout the pandemic as well.
Right.
Like, this isn't a new thing for them, so they know that it's a very sensitive time to be, you know, doing that type of thing for a meter install.
Right, my concern is more of what a valve costs and maybe the average percentage that you see from an older community that has, you know, different types of meters that are, I think, 20 years or longer.
Sure. I think that's, what do you think about valves that are gonna be in people's houses, depending on the age of the house, I guess?
Some of that depends on what people have done inside as far as good housekeeping with their own valves.
Correct.
To replace one, you're not gonna get a plumber today for less than $100 to replace anything.
Right.
You know, that's really something that we'd have to look at but we also have the outside shut off to work with too, you know, the curb stop, that's much more reliable than the gate style valves. But yeah, you wouldn't get a valve replaced for $100 today.
Right.
And I would say we're lucky in a blend of new construction and older that we're not all the inside plumbing's not old.
Right. But if it was all done at the same time as the install, then it would be just the part and the labor would be, you know, the economies of scale of that.
Yeah.
So that could be factored in.
Yes.
Okay. I've taken up enough time. I'll pass on to Ms. Kraus.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Councilmember Kraus, questions for our DPW director or our guests?
Thank you. Well, most of mine have been asked. Thank you for the presentation. It's a lot of information. For Director Searles, just a quick question for you then. It seems to me like we are leveraging being good stewards of what our current investments are, what we currently have going on, with updating to current technology and more efficient processes. So keeping that in mind, have we, or will we be presented with how we could update our current system to bring everybody instead of a patchwork quilt of different? Because this is, I don't like to make decisions based on, you know, one offer, one company, is there any?
Absolutely. I did request an updated propagation study and quote from Neptune as you guys asked me to. I haven't received it yet. I did get a correspondence from Ferguson because we don't partner with Neptune. They just make meters. The local rep is Ferguson, and I think there might be an impression that we have a contract with them. We do not. They're just a vendor of meters. But I did request a quote for meter change-out AMI system with Ferguson, and they're supposed to. I did get a correspondence back that they're working on it, actually today. I got a reminder that they're working on it.
So they're able to provide us with the same thing. I realize there's differences between companies, of course, but
Yeah.
but something similar, at least to give a benchmark as to how we could maybe save some of our current investment in what we have now.
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty much what I want. So we will be having that information.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Very good. The quick question for the city manager, is it your intent then that we would revisit this issue as an action item at our next regular meeting, which I believe is is that the 16th?
The 20th, I believe?
20th, excuse me.
Yes, our intent is hopefully we'll have a presentation from another provider during that meeting and continue the conversation.
Very good. I would ask, I'll go around the table real quick in just a moment. I would ask that in the interim, if you do have questions, either direct them to the city manager or to the DPW director. Sounds like Director Searles will be coming back at our next meeting with some additional information that was discussed or requested, rather, at our previous meeting a couple weeks back. One final opportunity for questions. I'll go by hands. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just real quick, City Manager O'Toole, will we be having the financial assessments where some of these figures that were used, like a 17% measurement loss and some of that, explain to us how we would apply that in terms of additional revenue and so forth, so we could see how that would be a payback?
Absolutely, and when we have the numbers from Ferguson, we can also kind of do a side-by-side.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Delorco, please.
I just was hoping get some further clarification on the part of the quotation or description that deals with additive options, mainly post-installation core field managed services. It looks like there's additional expenses that would be tacked on to what we had originally bargained for in terms of the utility and customer leak notifications. Is that an extra added service that the customer would have to subscribe and buy into to utilize the application and the platform, or is it provided to all the customers as we move in this direction?
No, so I kind of have that proposal in front of me. I see why you have that question. That is actually provided. I wish I would have put like a little bullet here. The additive was for field management, for the fleet system, not for any of the things discussed here tonight.
So, as with any AMI system, leak notification would be provided as part of that service without any extra hidden cost?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions from the dais? Mr. Seal, anything you'd like to add before we transition to the consent agenda?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Searles?
And Councilman Delorco, there are several other functions that the dashboard is capable of, including fleet tracking of vehicles and stuff. So there's other things that we might want to leverage later, but just staying with they do more than just meters, but just staying with just meters, no, that would be with the system.
Okay, thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. We look forward to revisiting this. It was a very thorough presentation. And Mr. Searles, thank you as well for your work on this. We will transition now to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
I would like to remove 2 items for discussion.
Okay, please state the items.
Yes, C-2195 and C-21241.
Say those numbers one more time.
Sure, it's 95 and 241. It's the Ldfa amended fiscal year 22 budget and the Oakwood Cemetery Board bylaws.
Okay, so those will become, the bylaws will be considered after water reliability study, and Ldfa amended budget FY22 will be considered as the first item at new business. As a reminder to council colleagues, it would be beneficial for the clerk and myself and city manager to know of questions or concerns you have about the consent agenda prior to the actual meeting. Is there a motion then to approve those as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Gearbout to approve as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kamara Sulak. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries
Aye.
unanimously. First motion will be the first item removed from the consent agenda, which is C-21-95. This will be a motion to approve the Ldfa amended FY22 budget.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Dillon. Councilmember Dillon, I believe you had a question or concern.
I do. I just wanted to touch base regarding the memorandum that was attached to that. There was some question about Ldfa 1 and their contributions and shortfalls. And I spoke with Mr. Gearbaugh about this today as he sits on the alphabet boards. And so I'm going to yield to him to better describe where the questions lie.
And what Councilmember Dillon is requesting is, we know we identify the shortfalls. How do we properly, I guess, account for them? And this will be something, a question that will go for it. I believe we show those as a liability to the city in the balance sheet of the fund, if that's correct, Ms. O'Toole?
I believe so.
And the question, though, I believe that I provided and asked in the past too, is how do we resolve that shortfall over, I mean, the idea is that we'll resolve it over future revenues coming into the Ldfa, number one, but also, and I've asked this in prior years, we've received revenue through the state equalization after the change of how they handle personal property taxes. And that, in my thinking, some of the funds that are currently sitting as either undesignated or designated, which we placed in the general fund, should flow back into the Ldfa number 2 to resolve that. And I would like to have that assessment.
Okay. Miley, or, excuse me, Assistant Treasurer Weberline, in the absence of the city treasurer, I'm sure you took note of the questions or concerns raised by my colleagues. Perhaps you and I and City Treasurer Bennett can discuss this tomorrow and then provide a subsequent communique to our city council colleagues. But I don't have any objection to what's being articulated, and I think that can easily be resolved. Okay, thank you.
And I think we have it resolved. It's just the issue of understanding clearly how we will handle that in the future.
And how it's reported.
And should we clean that up?
Sure.
It's one of those
Yep.
things that has
Yep.
been concerned. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Gearbaum.
Anything else on then the motion to approve the LDFA FY22 amended budget? Then we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say
Aye.
nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move to new business item 21-238. This is HDC ordinance amendment. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the November 16th, 2021 memo from HDC Staff Liaison Weberline and to approve and adopt or not to approve amended language to Division 4, Article 4, Historic District Ordinance of Chapter 2 Administration of the Saline Code of Ordinances.
I will acknowledge, approve, and adopt.
Thank you, Councilmember Kraus. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Kamara Sulek. Thank you. Staff Liaison Weberline, would you care to comment?
It's pretty much written out in that memo, but the whole basis of this update is it's required by SHPO. If you remember back in the end of 2018, we had our yearly annual review or audit, if you will, and there were a number of deficiencies that we needed to correct, and one of them was our ordinance needed to reflect the Public Act 169, 169 as amended. So this reflects those changes as required by SHPO to maintain our certified local government status. If there's
Very
any
good.
questions?
Thank you, Assistant Treasurer Weberline. Let me defer first to Councilmember Kraus as the council liaison to HDC. Is there anything that you'd like to add at this time before we open up for questions?
No, it was just the proposed ordinance was reviewed. We needed to make some changes. We did. We had our open meeting, public meeting. There were 2 people who attended. One was in favor, one had some concerns, but everything is as we had to do based on their recommendations in 2018. Miley did a great job. She does a great job, actually, on the Historic District, keeping everything straight.
Very good. Thank you for that. Are there questions for either our council liaison or our assistant treasurer? Is there any subsequent discussion on the motion? There is none. Miley, thank you very much. Then I'll call for a vote. It's been properly moved by Kraus, seconded by Kamara Sulek to acknowledge, to approve, and to adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 21-239. This is water valve assessment, testing, and information management program. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the November 29th, 2021 memo from DPW Director Searles and to approve an award or not to approve the water valve assessment, testing, information management program as submitted by Hydromax USA in the amount of $45,760.
Move to acknowledge and award.
Moved,
Approve and award.
thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. So it's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh to acknowledge, to approve, and to award. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, was that Mr. Delorico?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Searles, would you like to begin? And I'll also, for full disclosure, City Engineer Humphreys and I had probably about a 30-minute phone call this afternoon in reference to water quality to both this agenda item and the subsequent one, 21-240. So Tesha, at the end of Mr. Searles' remarks, if there's anything you'd like to add, we would welcome that. Director Searles.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Council, this is a positive program to start attacking our water quality issues. I think one of the greatest first steps is let's find out what we have out there. What we're going to get is a valve assessment program where they touch, operate, and record all the data associated with each valve in the system. There is also a line item for repairs if necessary. All repairs would be reported to us first. We'd give them the yes or no. We're going to dump the data to them as far as our current GIS information. They're going to fill in the tables while they're out there as far as number of turns, valve key depth, all the information that you'd love to have as a director about your valves. When they're done, that data gets turned back over to us in an electronic form. It rolls right into our GIS mapping system, and we'll have an accurate, definitive on-off, how the valve turns, opens, and what needs repair and what doesn't. And it's going to be a great tool for us to know where we're at.
Very good. City Engineer Humphries, anything you'd like to add at this time?
Well, I'm going to get a little bit more in-depth in my presentation next about the importance of valves in, with the flushing for the hydrants and flushing of the system. And like Larry said, until we know where all our valves are and if they're open or closed, we can't even go to that next step. So finding everything out in the field and operating them, making sure they're open is step one, absolutely.
Very good. Thank you. We look forward to your more thorough analysis in the subsequent motion. Thank you. City Manager O'Toole, anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to express my appreciation to Director Searles and Engineer Humphries for putting together both the valve turning program and the upcoming water reliability study. We're turning this around as quickly as possible, specifically in response to the water quality issues we're facing.
Indeed. Very good. I appreciate staff moving expeditiously on this. Let me begin with our virtual member. Mr. CO, any questions for the city engineer, DPW director, or city manager reference a water valve assessment?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Please.
I addressed a question previously to both the city manager and Mr. Searles about the cost. The low bid I see on the sheets is $45,000, yet this request is for approval of an amount of, I think, $36,000. I just was curious what the difference is.
So the requested amount should read $45,760. It's our anticipation that that will be split across 2 fiscal years. We already have $37,000 budgeted for the current fiscal year.
Okay, so this work then will go into next year as well,
Correct.
next budget year.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's my only question.
Thank you, Mr. CO. Again, I'll show of hands. If there's anyone at the dais who'd like to ask a question, just simply raise your hand. I'll be delighted to call on you. I'll begin with Mr. Delorco.
Yeah, I'd just like to start with a comment that, having had a chance to review the memo circulated by the city manager on Friday, included by our new city engineer, that this is a crucial step forward to beginning to understand and address the issues with water quality that we've been having, and therefore it is of paramount importance that we move forward with this. My only question is in relation to the quotations that we received for the work bids requested. There's such a wide range between the low bid and the high bid of, starting at $45,760 and the high bid coming in at $170,000. It's a wide range. I'm just curious as to if all of these contractors are bidding similar levels of service, and if they're all being held to our newly established bid evaluation criteria and our responsible contractors ordinance.
Well, I can definitely tell you the HESCO bid, and Clerk Royal, you'll back me up. They really didn't fill out everything. I don't think they actually understood what was going on, but I can tell you the favorable number that we got from Hydromax is probably based on them being in town doing a massive, exact same project for GLWA and the city of Novi.
Okay.
So I think we're benefiting from their economies of scale in the area.
Okay, very good, very good. And we are rolling out the bid evaluation criteria now?
So for bids in excess of $100,000, yes.
Okay. Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, that's all I have.
All you had, Mr. Delorco. Thank you for that. Councilmember Kraus?
Thank you. Just a quick question. So the issue that we had this past week with the valve missing in the Henry Street Water Tower, while the contractors were in there already to do routine maintenance, would this have alleviated that need then, that extra step to shut down the water? Because we would have known there was one missing there?
Well, I believe the answer is that valve was inside. That one wouldn't have been covered, but when Bill called for our help, we would have been able to help him faster.
Okay, well, I'll take that. That's all I have.
We would have known where the valves were
Yeah.
for that tower, yeah.
So he had to spend more time digging around because you didn't know where it was or was supposed to be?
Correct.
Got it, okay. That's it, thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Kamara Sulak?
Thank you. When was the last time the valves were checked? Are there any records of that? I just have to ask.
Can I plead the fifth, sir?
You can.
I don't know.
Good enough. Approximately how much does it cost to replace a valve, labor and material?
To replace a valve, I think that would probably be if you could do it inside the gate well versus outside. So you'd have a shutdown outside of that valve. It would probably be a 6-hour job. and $7,000.
Okay. And just for reference, what is the size of these valves?
Everywhere from 4-inch up to 16-inch. We have one 16-inch valve.
Okay, that's a pretty big job to replace them.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps me understand the scope of it. Very good memorandum, thank you. That answers mine.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Dillon?
Thank you. I appreciate Mr. Searles answering. I had a bunch of questions I sent to him earlier today. I do want to kind of recap a few of those just to make sure that the public and council members understand. One of the questions I had asked him is, in the bid information that was provided to us, there was optional work bid that you've chosen not to pursue. And you had indicated that's for hydrant valves. Is there a reason that you don't want to do that at this point?
It doesn't bring us the value as the system valves. The hydrant valve, meaning every fire hydrant has a companion valve that is for that hydrant only. So in general, even if you don't see it at the surface, it's not hard to find. It's within 18 inches of the fire hydrant usually. And it's not going to be the ones that we need to worry about that could be potential problems for our system's hydraulics.
Okay. Fantastic. My next question was about, in the memo, it had talked about years 1 to 4. And if you could just elaborate on what your plan is with that.
We put this out for bids in 1 to 4 because the line item in the budget was year 1 of a 4-year program. So we did put it out there. I'm sure that might have been to help in case of prices coming in extremely high and for us to budget appropriately in the future. But it looks like this is going to be covered in our first 2 years, well within our first 2 years.
Right. And then how long do you expect it would take to do the repairs of those valves? Will those be done in real time, or are they going to have to be budgeted out and go into subsequent years?
So when we get the first year, the fiscal year going, I'll have a better idea of what kind of repair volume and scope that's coming in. So I could give you guys a very precise, hey, we might need an additional 6,000-7,000. But a lot of the repairs outside of the operating nut, we may be doing internally anyway. So we're really going to have to see what condition the valves are in.
Thank you very much, and thank you for reiterating that.
Mayor Pro Tem Gearba?
Just a couple questions. How often do you think we're going to have to do this on a regular basis? Do you think this one time will establish us for 5 years or a decade?
This one-time valve assessment is exactly one-time valve assessment. Going forward, we're going to have a valve turning program that covers the city in fifths, and we're going to continually work that system out with our internal staff.
So then each year you'll be looking at determining exactly where those valves are positioned, so we'll always have a record that's within a few years.
Well, more importantly, we're going to make sure that they're in good working order every 5 years. They're not going to move on us.
So this is an adoption of a full-time maintenance protocol for every year then? Thanks.
Yeah.
And could you explain just the valve again? Because even for our task force, we were trying to understand the difference between what a gate valve does and the reason why you can't tell where the position of the valve is at this point in time.
Oh, okay. So when you think of a valve, you're looking inside your home. If you were to look at your gate valves, the ones with knobs, everything that travels is contained within the bonnet of the valve. Picture your gate valves on your meter. Everything that moves is hidden by the valve body in the bonnet. In some large industrial settings, they have an OS and Y valve, and purposely that stem goes up and down. That way you can visually see in the process plant what's open and closed. But these being, very much underwater, oftentimes they're buried. They contain everything so that they don't get all contaminated and mucked up with their environment. So they're contained, so you can't see if they're on or off.
Yep. And it's clearly, I think this is what's contributed, either due to inexperience or not understanding where the position of the valves were that helped create these faults or artificial ends that we've been
Artificial
talking
dead
about.
ends.
Dead ends, and so unfortunately, when you lose staff and transition and those type of things, everything gets lost. So we're basically trying to put ourselves back to square one again, and I think this is one of the ways that we need to do it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gearba. Any additional questions from the dais? Mr. Searles, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any subsequent discussion on the motion? No, then the chair will call for a vote. It's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Gearboss, seconded by Councilmember Del Orco to acknowledge, to approve, and to award. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say
Aye.
nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 21-240. This is water reliability study. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the November 30th, 2021 memo from City Engineer Humphreys and to approve or not to approve Tetra Tech proposal dated November 30th, 2021 for preparation of a water reliability study, including hydraulic water model updates and calibration in the amount of $29,800.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Gearboss to acknowledge and to approve. Is that a second by Kraus?
Yes.
Thank you. Engineer Humphreys, would you like to begin? And then you're welcome to call upon Brian Rubel from Tetra Tech, who is representing the vendor this evening.
Sure, yes, Brian's here today, and I think I've met most of you. I'm Tasha Humphreys, the engineer here. I've been here for a month now, and I will say that the reliability study from 2016 was a good starting point for me to look and get my arms around what the system consists of. Speaking of just the reliability study, it's a state-required document, and I realize it's an expensive study, but it goes into all aspects of our water system. It's the water plant. How does the water plant operate? How do the water towers operate? It's looking at the water model of your distribution system, calibrating the water model, and getting all of your aspects of your water system, including your demand, how much water your customers use, and looking at future improvements for your existing demand and future demand. That's kind of the bare bones or minimum things that are included in a reliability study. I'm particularly interested in the reliability study at this point because of the ongoing water quality issues that we have here. Like I said, I've been here a month, and in the time that I've spent here, this is obviously a major issue, and I do believe it's tuberculation, corrosion on the interior of the pipes, and it's caught in our distribution system, and we need to get it out. We need to get the slugs of stuff out of our distribution system. And from talking to some of our operators, I understand we can't even open up 2 hydrants in some area of our system. I'm concerned that we might have valves closed in different areas of our system. I also know that we do not know, we have, like Larry just said, we haven't been to all of our valves. We don't know where they're all located. Are they all fully open? If we get the water model, which is part of the reliability study, calibrated to our current conditions, it will help us troubleshoot the distribution system. We can go and look for closed valves in this area of the system. We can look and make sure the velocities of the system. We have flushed the system, absolutely, and we are reinstating dead-end flushing. There's lots of flushing solutions to this problem. But I do not believe we have done a full, is it called unidirectional, getting the aggressive velocity in flushing that has not been done to the extent it needs to be done, because the way it needs to be done is start at the plant and close valves to force water through the pipes you want it to go through, reopen valves and close other valves to get your velocities through your mains to get all that slug of stuff out of the mains and out the hydrant instead of into our customers' homes. But again, all of that the first step in all of that is getting our arms around the distribution system, a calibrated hydraulic model, so we can come up with that plan and then implement that plan.
I think that was very well articulated. And we do welcome here, I think this is your first formal presentation.
Yes, and there's a lot to squish in there, Brian.
Yeah,
I wasn't
yeah.
sure what to
Yeah, so we had a good talk this afternoon, and I think you have your handle on this, and I suspect you're absolutely right, which is while we did complete a comprehensive directional flushing initiative, and while that flushing did reduce the number of water complaints, we're not anywhere close to what I would define as an acceptable level. An acceptable level should be, as I articulated to you this afternoon, going back to where we were in 2019, 2018, where my office would maybe get a handful of complaints a year,
Right.
not a week. So I think assessing the valves and then doing a thorough, comprehensive flushing to get those slugs out of the system so they're not appearing in the homes of our residents or business owners is ideal and should be done expeditiously. And obviously, the previous motion and this motion will help us do that. So thank you very much for that. Mr. Rubel, is there anything that you'd like to add at this time? It's a tough act to follow. She was succinct and thorough.
I will try to live up to that standard.
Okay,
So,
fair enough.
We grew up in the same hometown, actually, so maybe we have.
Adrian, is that right?
We did.
Okay.
We did indeed. Ms. Humphries said it very well, what the project is about. I will point out that and she laid the groundwork for it, that it is a very important planning tool, this model. And when I went back and looked over, since we did this in 2016, I believe we used it 20 different times for other questions about the distribution system, development or pressure or something like that. So it really does lay the foundation for many things that will follow, and it's important to do it well.
I may have missed this. Perhaps you could address it, Mr. Rubel or Engineer Humphries. I know it's a statutory requirement. Is it every 5 years an analysis like this has to be done?
Yes.
Okay, so it's actually kind of serendipitous that it happened in 16 and we can do it again now. 'Cause
It was time anyway. It was put in the budget, I believe, for that purpose. And as you mentioned, the proposal, I think the familiarity we have with that model brings some cost efficiencies to the effort. So we will save some money with our experience.
Very good. Why don't you hang tight? Are there questions for either Mr. Rubel or City Engineer Humphries? I'll start with Councilmember Kraus.
Thank you. Ms. Humphries, thank you. That was really good. It's nice to see you here. Quick question. I know it's required. Does this study offer anything above and beyond what the minimum requirement is, or is it just what the state normally requires?
So the state's list is quite long and extensive, and I believe that we will take the parts of it that we want to expand on, like the water model, and make it what we want, and then, well, even the emergency response plan, the parts of the distribution system, I believe we're checking the box, but going above and beyond, absolutely.
Okay, and then one more question. You said, I don't want to misquote you, the main issues that you've seen with the water system in your 1 month here, tuberculation, did I hear that right?
So that's the corrosion on the interior of the old water main pipes. So what happens with the older pipes, and it actually corrodes on the interior. So if the pipe was not properly cement lined or was not proper, like old cast iron pipes, old iron pipes, gets corrosion on the interior of it. And in fact, I live over by Highland, and when the water main came out on Highland Drive, I mean, the interior of that water main was, I don't know, maybe the diameter of 6 inch was maybe a 4-inch diameter inside of it, because of the buildup on the interior of the pipe. And so that buildup, and then when we get velocities of the water's going back and forth in the system, it knocks some of that loose, and that sediment builds up, and then it gets up into the different areas of the system, or low points or people's house of the system.
And have you seen anything else that might be of issue, or that's your main takeaway as to date?
Right now, that's the thing yes, that's my main, and there's lots of support for that. Lots of communities deal with that. I've actually found a couple good EPA and AWWA. So EPA, everybody knows what that is, but the AWWA is the American Water Works Association, and they have a couple really good documents that deal with exactly this. Older pipes in communities that are corroding, and how to get that stuff out of the interior of the pipes.
All right, it sounds like you have a good plan with Director Searles in place and Mr. Rubel, and there's a lot of people working on the water. So
Yes.
appreciate that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Commissioner Sulek, I believe you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Nice to see you. Thanks for what you're bringing to us. I think we're going down the right road now. Will this help us in comparing to what the 2016 assessment found?
Well, one, we have grown since 2016, and so we do need to add, that's one of the first steps in the water models, to add all of the new major pipe that has been added since 2016. And I guess your question as far as will it help, like, to troubleshoot?
Yeah, and just looking as far as what's transpired in the last 5 years, and to be proactive as we go forward, so that we can.
Well, here's where I think it might help as far as going back in time, is that it will require multiple meetings with myself, Tetra Tech, and different members of our staff. We need to meet with our water treatment plant staff to talk about how the water plant is operated, so we can properly input that into the model. We'll need to meet with some of our distribution staff to maintain that, to talk about how the valves are where different, and to do hydrant tests to calibrate the model. So I think instead of being able to compare model to model, I don't know if that's where the benefit will come from, but more from us actually meeting and talking about all that has changed in the last, and getting Director Searles and myself up to speed is a big part of it too, and getting all the data we can get to try to, because I don't have an answer for you why it got worse, and I don't know if I will. having a direct thing, it happened on this day and it got worse that day, that's a hard thing to answer.
Right.
But I think we can come up with an answer on how to make it better, or we are working on that, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I'm not trying to pin you down to that,
Yeah.
especially only after a month
Yes.
and what you came into. How long does it take for this assessment? And will it result, I mean, I'm assuming it could likely result in some significant replacement and repairs.
Yeah, and in fact, absolutely out of it is a capital improvement plan that comes out of it, and I think this last one had multi-million dollars of improvements, including a new storage tank in the system is recommended, and we're getting short on storage with our 2 tanks and our growth. So it absolutely will have capital improvement recommendations for it. I think to answer your question about how long, the water model calibration is the first thing I'd like to do. That will take a few months. That involves going out, like I said, these meetings with the modelers from Tetra Tech and staff, collecting data we have to make some estimates on how our water usage is throughout the day, collecting that type of data, and working with staff to collect hydrant tests and such, and to calibrate. So we actually have to go out, open up the model, open up the hydrants, collect pressure data that will help us to calibrate the model. I actually worked in a system up in Livingston County, and Tetra Tech was the modeler in that system also, and they, sure enough, where they said a valve was closed, the valve was closed. And so when you get out in the field and get that information and compare it to what you're actually seeing with pressures out in the field, you can help to see areas of the system that they're not matching up. So I think the model calibration will take, but that's a process that's not going to happen next month. It'll take a few months to happen. I think it'll work nicely in conjunction with what was just approved with the valve finding. I mean, those things are coming together at the same time. So they will be occurring, I believe, concurrently over the winter months here.
All right. Thank you. That really clarifies all the different moving parts. And I think this is very promising to fix the problems that we have and be proactive into the future. So thank you very much.
Yes, these are the 2 steps. Yes, 2 of our first steps we're looking at.
Additional questions for our city engineer? Councilmember Dillon.
Thank you. The questions may actually be for the city manager, and they both are from the financial side of this. And so I guess I wanted to know, with the anticipated time frame, will we just put placeholders in the budgets moving forward? Because we're going to miss our budget cycle if this is going to take several months.
Do you mean for the capital projects that arise out of the recommendations?
Right.
Yes, I would anticipate any capital projects arising out of that are likely not to occur in fiscal year '23. We'd be talking about incorporating them into our capital improvement plan when we're starting the budget for fiscal year '24.
Okay. I want to make sure, though, that there's money earmarked so that if there is something that can be done to resolve any of the water quality issues, it's not being held off due to budgeting.
Sure. I think that may be a question that we can answer more succinctly when we have more information about the valves, because that's going to be our priority, is making sure we don't have any artificial dead ends in the system and we can get good, true unidirectional flushing.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any additional questions? Thank you, city engineer. Appreciate it. Is there any subsequent discussion on the motion? No, then we have a motion moved by Mayor Pro Tem Gearboss, seconded by Councilmember Kraus to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. The last agenda item of the evening is motion C-21-241, motion to approve the Oakwood Cemetery bylaws.
Move to approve.
Moved by Gearboss to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kamara Sulak. Were there questions? Councilmember Dillon.
I do have a question. One of the things is, as we are now updating bylaws for all of our new committees, all of our committees, not just new, I would like to look at the possibility of adding term limits to our bylaws for our members. I think that it is important, with the wealth of knowledge that comes from experience, there also is a lot of value in bringing new people on board. And so I would like to see if there is an option for us to consider adding that into bylaws for all of our committees as we go ahead and update our bylaws.
Okay, any additional discussion? No, there a motion on the floor, moved by Gearboss, seconded by Camara Sulak to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. First up is, under discussion, is commission, committee, and task force reports from council members. Let me start with our remote member. Mr. Seal, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
Nothing to report, Your Honor.
Very good. Mr. Delorco?
So the Code Review Committee met this week, and it looks like we have approved both the drafts for the regulatory recreational marijuana ordinance as well as the zoning recreational marijuana ordinance. Both of those will be forwarded on to the Planning Commission for review, and then they'll be winging their way to council for evaluation. There's a lot of work that went into that to build on what we've done with the medical, so eager to hear feedback on that. With respect to the Environmental Commission, we had our second tour at the MRF. Thank you for those who attended. Hopefully that was a rewarding experience. Coming up to a critical mass with 3 vacancies on the horizon for the Environmental Commission, so I just wanted to put out a call to anyone in the community that may be interested in serving on that board or committee, that we would love to have you on board if you have a passionate interest in serving on the Environmental Commission. Also, the Environmental Commission is moving in the direction of establishing a small business grant program for businesses, and we are developing a subcommittee to figure out how to craft that grant language and make those funds available to business owners.
Very good. Thank you, and thank you for setting up that tour to the MRF. It was very much appreciated. Sorry I wasn't able to attend. Appreciate you taking the lead on that. Mayor Pro Tem Gearbox, committee, commissioner, task force reports.
Yeah, I'll give a little summary of the task force, and you may want to contribute too for the rec center. We were able to do a tour this weekend, or this past Thursday, I should say, to review what the facilities and operations are in different locations within the Southeast Michigan, and we visited Dexter Wellness Center, the Livonia Rec Center, Canton's, Washtenaw Community College, and also Romulus. And, you know, it's amazing what you can do when you have a real financial base to support those type of activities. And I think for us, what we were looking is to determine other things that we could actually incorporate maybe into our operations, or other things that could potentially provide us with solutions for some of the repairs and things that we need to do at our facility, or even if potentially some other functions or features. And what you did realize is that a lot of them have these large water features and functions like that, but they also are facing the same concerns that we are, is that because of COVID, they're operating at a 50 to 70% capacity, and it's not unusual. It's still happening. They're still trying to get individuals to come forth and participate. But our hope is that when we look at these, it may give us some ideas of what to do in the future, and even addressing some of the functions that people are provided in terms of pickleball. Basically, racquetball courts are no longer being installed in any facilities. We did understand that a couple of the facilities had their operations handled by program management, I believe it is, where that's an outside agency that oversees them. But it was a different approach. When you looked at Dexter, they don't have anyone under 16 in their facilities. It's more of a private type operation. They don't have lifeguards, which was kind of a interesting aspect, but because they're a private non-foundation. They also have a $25 million endowment that helps contribute towards it. So there's a lot of different things that we'd like to have things here, but there's some realities that will have to be brought into line, and I think it's a good way. We're hoping to look at a couple more, but I want to just state right here that this community has successfully created a rec center that is basically financed, except for the last year or two, 90 to 85% from its own membership fees, and just a significant or a small amount of support coming from its general fund, where the majority of these other organizations have a dedicated millage or some other source coming in besides their membership fees. So for us, in the last 25 to 30 years that we've done this, yes, it has been a little hit to our budget, but we've accomplished a significant amount for this current, and I want to make sure that we understand that when we talk about it being a jewel, it is a jewel. It's just, how do you function in the 2021 post-COVID period. So we'll move forward on that, and that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah, I think that was well put. I mean, obviously, it's clear that from an aesthetic cosmetics perspective, our facility needs some updating, and there's certain amenities that I think we should probably be looking to integrate in the next 5 to 10 years. But, to one of Mr. Gearbaugh's points, ours is truly a community center, a resource for people of all ages at all skill level. And that's not necessarily what we saw touring all of the 5 facilities last Thursday. There were some, including Livonia, that are truly community centers with resources for folks of all ages. And that's, from my perspective, that's what we're looking to emulate and also try to remain relevant and, of course, financially viable in the ensuing decade. So we'll have a discussion. We'll debrief on our tour, I think, a week from this Thursday. To Mr. Gearbaugh's point, we hope to tour a few more facilities. And then we're going to kind of zero in on that final report, which will be submitted to council before the end of March 2022. Councilmember Dillon, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
Not at this time.
Councilmember Kamara Sulak.
Yes, thank you. So, as everyone on the dais can attest, the holiday parade was a real success. It was nice to have it back after a year off. And we had 4 members of the Saline Youth Council that were carrying the banner, and it was really nice to see them involved and mingling a little bit with council members. Another call out for anybody that's interested, we are looking for a couple additional youth council members. And lastly, working on projects that will assist those in need. And more information will be coming that soon. The Arts and Culture Committee, the Art Around Saline applicants, I believe, are almost complete. It's looking to be a good number, and that is always a wonderful event, as you can tell by all the art projects, art pieces that are around the city. And then the DEI committee, we're also accepting new member applications. We'll be putting out more inclusive posts about the myriad of different holiday celebrations that people celebrate. And then lastly, gearing up for some more trainings for the community. As you recall, we had some implicit bias trainings. So in the new year, there'll be some additional trainings coming. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Kraus, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
Thank you. I have a few. First of all, thank you, Mr. Delorco, for setting up the MRF tour. That was eye-opening. Recycling does not work like you think it does. And a lot of times we're thinking we're doing the right thing, but we're not. A couple things I noticed. Glass, we should not be recycling glass. And so I don't know if the city's website needs to get updated, last I looked. It gets thrown out, and that, just because something's recyclable doesn't mean that our pickup, the way that we're doing it, recycles it. That was my takeaway. Some things can be recycled, but you have to take them elsewhere. So that was huge. Plastic grocery bags, Christmas lights, the amount of stuff that people were throwing in that's not even recyclable killed me. I mean, it was crazy. So that was a takeaway. I appreciated going to that. The holiday parade, I wanted to, what you said about the youth council, there were 2 members of the youth council who walked with us, and they want to get more involved in civic activities. So they're actually going to be helping us with our data for the healthcare task force, which was kind of nice, seeing the younger people take interest. Finally, on healthcare task force, we had a presentation. We're shifting our focus to dementia and dementia-related disorders for both the patients and the caregivers, and try to how we can make Saline more dementia-friendly, and so that was nice. We had a really good presentation, and we're going to be working on making sure that we capture those needs and how we can make Saline more dementia-friendly as one part of our task force. That's it.
Very good. How about reports or other announcements? I'll start with Mr. Seal again. Any reports or announcements, sir?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Delorco?
None at this time.
Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh?
I just want to give everybody an invitation to come attend Christmas at Rentschler Farm this weekend from 12 to 4, both on Saturday and Sunday. we're going to have Santa visit and Mrs. Claus, and then the house will be open, and we're hoping to have a number of people turn out. It's going to be a nice time. We're glad to be able to do it again after not being able to do it last year. And Christmas trees set up, and the wreaths are up, so it's looking a little bit like Christmas.
Very good. I can confirm on behalf of DPW, and Mr. Searles can help me with this, leaf collection now has been extended to this Friday, but I assume residents are encouraged to get those leaves to the curb as soon as possible, not to wait to Thursday or Friday, try to get them out tomorrow, Wednesday. Okay, very good.
Can you make it stop raining?
Can't help you there. Say again? Okay, yeah, turn it to snow, indeed. Councilmember Dillon, any reports or announcements?
I just would like to make mention, I also was able to participate in the tour of the recycling facility. It is, as Ms. Kraus mentioned, eye-opening to see what is there. It's actually a bit discouraging because you do think that you're doing the right thing. Unfortunately, you are being lumped in with several other communities. And if they're not recycling correctly, it impacts what you're putting there also. I did want to make mention, as she had said about glass, I mentioned it several months ago. Glass is heavy. We pay by the ton for recycling. And right now, there is not a market for glass. It is taken out, it is destroyed, and it is put over landfills. It is actually not recycled. And I think the city needs to take a very firm look at what direction we want to go with recycling. There's a lot that is going into those bins that is not recyclable. And we are very fortunate to be a part of the consortium, and there will hopefully be some educational pieces coming forward. But we really do need to be better stewards of what is going in the recycling bins. The company, to be honest, they are in the business of business. They do recycling as a business. They will gladly accept whatever we send to them because they get paid for it. So we definitely need to do a little bit more educating and decide if, what we want to continue with as far as recycling.
Mr. Kamara Sulak, any additional reports or announcements?
None, Your Honor.
Councilmember Kraus? No? Then finally, on water quality, I just wanted to confirm that water tests are still available for interested parties. The container and instructions can be picked up at the front counter of City Hall. It is my understanding, City Manager O'Toole, because this was mentioned at our water quality town hall, that an additional round of tests will be made available specific to bacterias and lead. If individuals are interested in having that test performed, I assume that they contact your office directly?
Correct.
Okay, and Colleen's direct line and email address are on the city's website. I also want to encourage folks that if they are experiencing protracted periods of brown water, to first fill out the water quality survey that remains online. If persistent brown rust-colored water continues, please reach out directly to the DPW line that's on that form. And also, I think there's an emergency or after-hours contact as well. And there is always somebody on call who can be reached at DPW. Director Searles, am I missing anything at this juncture? Yep, feel free.
We have reinstated a little bit of the dead-end flushing as complaint-driven for now. There will be a map available, I guarantee by the 20th, the meeting on the 20th, that will detail and highlight all of our dead ends. We're going to get back onto monthly flushing with them and hopefully help clear out some of the slugs that exist.
Great, and make sure to get that information too to Sarah, because we want to blast that on the city's website and all of our social media platforms.
Yes, sir.
Okay. While why don't you hang tight? Are there any questions, comments, reference water quality before we let our DPW director go? No? Easy enough. Okay. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Yep. We come now to public comments. This is our second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments from those in the audience this evening? The record will reflect there are none. Clerk Royal, did we receive any in advance or during tonight's meeting? No, sir. Easy enough. Please note our upcoming meetings, including our final visioning session on December 13th. And I do want to confirm that similar to the last actually the first strategic visioning session, there will be no dinner provided, just light snacks. So please plan to eat either before or after. And then our last regular meeting of the year will be on December 20th with a work meeting beginning at 6 p.m. to revisit reserve fund balance. And I also think are we going to be discussing, City Manager O'Toole, the revolving fund for equipment at that time as well?
Yes, really, that work session will be for all available fund allocations. So
Okay.
fund balance, reserve, compensated absences, the vehicle fund, all of those subjects will be broached.
Excellent. Okay. So that's a lot of ground to cover, so I just asked my colleagues to make sure that you're here promptly at 6 p.m. And then the regular meeting begins at 7. If there's nothing else to be brought before City Council this evening, the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:59 p.m. Moved by Gearba, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dylan. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.